始まった物語最初の1ページには風の中に立つ人が
Even if you may not have known it, you, at some point in your life, might have dabbled into the weird and wonderful world of Japanese animation. Whether your first experience came from VHS releases, syndicated television, or even digital distribution, it's hard to deny that anime has had an impact on the lives of so many people all over the world. For me, the most defining trait about anime that has kept me coming back for the better part of my life is its sheer diversity. It's taken us on epic space operas, lighthearted adventures, witty satires, insightful dramas, and even something as simple as a glimpse into someone's daily life. These are commonly known as slice of life series, and there are a dime a dozen in the anime industry. Rarely does a season go by without at least one of these shows airing, making it extremely difficult for one of these shows to truly stand out. This is where today's topic, Amanchu, comes to the surface. Amanchu started life as a manga series in 2008 from author/artist Kozoe Amano, who is most known for penning the sci-fi classic Aria. The Studio JC staff were at the helm for Amanchu's adaptation. In addition, Junichi Sato was appointed as chief director, who coincidentally also directed the anime adaptation of Aria. On the surface, Amanchu is a story about two friends bonding over the joy of scuba diving. An original premise to be sure, so it already has a leg up above other shows that simply take place in high school. Even though that still technically kinda happens here, but let's not get sidetracked. Set in the eastern side of the Izu Peninsula, Futaba, a young introverted girl, has just arrived to her new home. She tends to remain distant and hesitant towards others, until she happens to come across a young goofball named Hikari. Futaba is perplexed by Hikari's childlike demeanor, and if we're being honest, you'd likely also be baffled by the student who openly smells her textbooks. Striking a conversation, Hikari quickly takes a liking to Futaba and forces a nickname onto her, Teko. Soon after, Hikari, who likes to be called Pikari, shows Teko her undying passion for scuba diving and wishes her to experience the joy of diving along with her. Understandably, Teko is apprehensive at first, but as time goes on, she soon opens up to the idea, and the two soon become inseparable friends. The show has an incredibly strong start. There's just this sense of indescribable charm that comes from this story, and it never fails to put a smile on your face. It's the kind of story that takes its time, slowly introducing the cast and not rushing major events. It lets you get to know these characters on a deeper and, dare I say, emotional level. The series also likes to teach you about the ins and outs of scuba diving, which I found to be quite engaging and insightful. Before watching this, I had no idea there was a way to clear out water from a pair of snorkeling goggles while underwater. I always looked forward to these moments. It shows that Kozoe Amano did her research on the subject, and because Teko is learning all of this along with us, it helps us connect with her as a character on an even deeper level. Admittedly, Amanchu mostly follows a formulaic episode structure. We start off with a character thinking about something, a conflict or event takes place, it gets resolved, and then we hear how that character changed via one more inner monologue. Despite this, it uses this structure the best way it can, to help flesh out its moderately sized cast. Teko is... how do I put this? She's quickly becoming one of my favorite introverted characters in all of anime, and she is without a doubt the best aspect of Amanchu. As an introvert myself, I can relate to many of the struggles that Teko goes through, ranging from, but not limited to, a lack of confidence, indecisiveness, and a tendency to overthink, but it's presented with enough believability to be taken seriously, and makes her, for lack of a better word, more human. She's clearly more of a follower than a leader, with the catalyst for her development coming from being encouraged and supported by her peers, much like actual introverts. While there are moments when her character goes through some ridiculous internal conflicts, seeing Teko grow from being a shy, melancholic girl into someone more confident and optimistic is wonderful to see, even if the show likes to blatantly tell us how much she's changed. On the other side of the coin is Pikari, who couldn't be any more different. While she's not as deep as Teko, or has to deal with any internal conflicts, she's not supposed to. Pikari exists as a source of optimism for Teko. There is nary a moment where Pikari isn't smiling with infectious glee, or simply going with the flow. While she doesn't have much going for her besides being quirky, if there's two things you'll take from her, one is that bizarre face she tends to make, and the other is her peculiar vocal tick, which you'll either grow to adore, or find incessantly annoying. When it comes to the supporting cast, they're all genuinely likable, and smartly chooses not to add too many characters to potentially bog down the cast. Even a character who I thought I'd despise for her unwarranted violence towards her brother, ultimately making her come off like a blatant metaphor for feminism. You know, screw men and all they stand for.
Row, row, fight the power.
But you know what? Even she's somewhat likable. However, while the cast is mostly solid and the scuba diving premise is presented well, there's one huge problem that unfortunately makes it hard for me to fully recommend Amanchu. Its lack of focus. Halfway through the series, it decides to stop focusing on what made the show unique in the first place, instead choosing to focus on clearly more important things like shopping, sports, love letters, and playing red light, green light. This is only made worse when a turning point in Teko's development is revealed, and something which could have been a perfect chance to bring some drama and emotion to an already emotionally packed story is simply put on the back burner, only to be quickly resolved 4 episodes later. Now granted, because we spent so much time on Teko in the first half, it only makes sense to give some time for the other characters to develop. So when you really think about it, Amanchu's biggest strength led to its biggest weakness, that being a lack of balance. Aesthetically, Amanchu has a very bright and relaxing tone, which is mainly attributed to its presentation. While the animation isn't going to blow you away, sometimes seeing something as simple as hair blowing in the wind, or even subtle character emotions can go a long way. However, I think Amanchu's true visual brilliance lies within its symbolism. You'd be surprised how thought-provoking some of these scenes can be. Let me give you an example. Early on in the series, there's a scene where Teko and Picari are both floating in a pool covered in flower petals. The key things to take from this scene is how it's shot and framed. We mostly never see the two in the same shot for a prolonged period, which can represent how different their thoughts on the ocean are. The petals on the water also serve a purpose, and are what makes this scene truly remarkable. When the two of them are in the same shot, they are on opposite sides of the frame. Now if you look into the center of the frame, you can see what could be considered a subtle border of petals. This little detail implies that Teko is taking a liking to Picari, but the border of petals are not giving her a clear view of her, implying that Teko still has a lot more to learn about her before she can get a clear view of who she is as a person. In my opinion, this shot as a whole can perfectly describe the beginnings of a long-lasting friendship. I really hope I demonstrated how powerful the scene is purely on a visual level. It's one of the many moments of Amanchu that will stick with you, and I can tell you with absolute confidence that this isn't the only scene with high symbolic values. Unfortunately, the story's lack of focus carries over into its visuals as well. The most eye-catching thing you'll undoubtedly notice is the constantly changing art style. Early on, it's quite endearing and even charming. I initially thought this was a brilliant usage of symbolism, brilliantly portraying what it's like to meet new people in an unfamiliar environment. Oh, how wrong I was. These ridiculous expressions have a habit of being overused as the series goes on, almost as if it's a dodge to avoid higher quality animation. What's more, they tend to bleed into scenes that are clearly meant to be taken more seriously, thereby ruining their emotional impact. This becomes more apparent as the series goes on, making something that was once charming into something annoying and distracting. Though, I will admit, these faces can sometimes be unintentionally terrifying, which did bring me a good chuckle from time to time. The soundtrack was composed by the duo group Gontidi. It tends to use the guitar and piano to help create a soft, calm atmosphere, which does nothing but benefit the tone of the series. A lot of tracks do tend to get repeated as the series progresses, but there's nothing in here that I would call a bad piece of music. When it comes to Amanchu as a whole, I'm torn. There is so much to love here. It grabs your attention quickly, it can be incredibly deep, and it has a pretty likable cast of characters. It just fails to keep up the momentum it built up across the first half, and makes the show far less engaging as a result. The way the show ends is decently satisfying, and things come full circle, but it's clear that there's more to this story that can be explored with a second season, and I really hope it gets one. Despite my mixed opinions on this show, I really think you should give Amanchu a shot, even if you only intend to watch a few episodes. Like I said, its first half is where Amanchu is at its best, and since you can find the entire series over at crunchyroll.com, you've got nothing to lose. Regardless, This is TrueStorySeamus, and I hope to see you beautiful people at a later date.